The cargo scanner beeped 3 times before Relics even touched the control panel. His antennae twitched with annoyance as he watched the small freight vessel drift closer to his inspection platform. Another day, another worn-out trader trying to squeeze through the outer rim checkpoints with who knows what hidden in their holds. The ship looked old. Not dangerous old, just tired. Patches covered the hull where meteor strikes had left their marks. The paint had faded from whatever color it used to be into a dull gray that matched 1,000 other vessels passing through this sector every week. The name on the side read Wandering Star in letters that barely showed up against the metal. Relics pulled his official jacket tighter and waited as the docking tube connected with a hiss. His 6 legs carried him through the airlock, and he prepared his usual speech about cooperation and consequences. The Galactic Trade Authority paid him to be thorough, and thorough he would be. The inner door opened. A human boy stood on the other side. Relic stopped. His mandibles clicked together twice, which was his species' version of a confused blink. The boy looked maybe 17 standard years old, with dark hair that stuck up in several directions and clothes that had been patched almost as many times as the ship's hull. He smiled like this was the most normal thing in the galaxy. "Hello, Inspector. Welcome aboard. I'm Owen." The boy stepped aside and gestured down the corridor. "Sorry about the mess. We just finished unloading at Station 12, and I haven't had time to clean up yet." "You are the pilot?" Relics asked. His translator device made his chittering voice sound flat and official. "Yeah, I handle the flying and the talking and most of the loading." Owen started walking, apparently expecting the inspector to follow. "The paperwork should all be in order. We're registered with the authority, taxes paid, the whole thing." Relics did follow, but his right manipulator hand stayed near his communication device. Something felt wrong. Humans were common enough in space these days, but human children operating cargo vessels alone? That triggered every protocol in his training manual. "Where's your crew? Your family? Your registered owner?" He pulled out his scanner and began running it over the corridor walls. "Clean. Too clean for a ship this old." "Oh, my dragon friend owns the ship, actually." Owen said it casually, like he was talking about the weather. "I just work for him. He's sleeping right now, but I can wake him if you need to see the registration documents in person." Relix's antennae stopped moving entirely. Then he made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter, though it came out harsher than he intended. "Dragon. Right. Is that what you humans call your business partners now?" "No, I mean an actual dragon." Owen opened a door to the cargo bay. "You know, big, scaly, breathes fire sometimes. That kind of dragon." The inspector's laughter grew louder. Dragons were stories. Legends that every species told their children about the ancient times before the modern galaxy existed. Creatures of massive power who could cross space without ships, who lived for thousands of years, who appeared in myths from 100 different worlds. But they were myths, nothing more. "Young human, I appreciate humor, but I have 17 more inspections today." Relics walked into the cargo bay, scanner raised. "Now, shall we begin with what you are really carrying?" The bay held exactly what the manifest claimed. Medical supplies in sealed containers. Agricultural equipment still in its protective wrapping. Educational tablets stacked in organized rows. All legal. All boring. All exactly the kind of cargo that made Relix's job feel like a waste of time. But his scanner showed something else. The ship's power signature was wrong. The energy readings coming from deeper in the vessel were 10 times higher than a cargo hauler should need. Either this boy was running illegal engines, or something else was generating that power. "What is your main power source?" Relix demanded. Owen scratched his head. "Honestly, I'm not completely sure. Ash handles the technical stuff. I just know how to fly and where the buttons are." "Ash, your dragon friend?" "Yeah." "Who owns this ship?" "Yep." Relix's patience cracked. He had suspected smuggling at first, maybe weapons or restricted tech. But now he wondered if this boy was simply unstable. Either way, the power readings were suspicious enough to warrant a full inspection. "I am invoking Trade Authority Regulation 47. I must inspect all areas of this vessel, including crew quarters and any restricted sections." He straightened to his full height, which brought him up to Owen's shoulder. You will cooperate or face detention. Owen's smile faded a little, but he didn't look scared. He looked sad, like someone who had hoped things would go differently. Okay, but I need to warn you about something first. Warn me? Ash doesn't like being woken up suddenly. He gets grumpy. Owen started walking toward the back of the cargo bay, where a larger door waited. And when a dragon gets grumpy, things can get complicated. Relics followed, one hand now definitely on his communication device. He was starting to think this human boy needed medical evaluation rather than legal prosecution. Dragons. Honestly, what would he claim next? That the ship was powered by magic. The door ahead was different from the others. Heavier, sealed with locks that looked far too advanced for a simple cargo vessel. And as Owen entered the unlock code, Relics felt something he hadn't felt in years. His genetic memory, buried deep in his species' evolution, suddenly screamed a single word: Predator. The door began to open. Warm air rushed out as the heavy door slid open. Not hot, but warmer than the rest of the ship by at least 10 degrees. The space beyond looked enormous, far larger than should fit inside a cargo vessel of this size. The walls curved upward into darkness, and soft lights embedded in the floor provided just enough illumination to see shapes, but not details. Relics took one step inside and froze. Something massive rested in the center of the chamber. At first, his brain tried to make it into machinery, into storage containers, into anything that made sense. But as his eyes adjusted, the truth became impossible to deny: scales. Thousands of them, each the size of his hand, layered across a body that stretched from one end of the chamber to the other. They caught the dim light and reflected it back in colors that shifted between silver and blue and something else that had no name in any language Relics knew. The creature's side rose and fell with slow, deep breaths that moved the air in the entire room. "Ash," Owen called softly. "We have a visitor." One eye opened. Just one, but it was enough to make Relics's legs lock in place. The eye was larger than his entire head, colored like molten gold, and it held an intelligence that made the inspector feel suddenly very small and very young. The pupil focused on him with the precision of a targeting system. Then the dragon moved. His head rose up and up, lifting on a neck thick as a tree trunk, until he towered over both of them. The mouth could have swallowed Relics whole, without any effort at all. Teeth longer than his arms caught the light. When Ash spoke, the sound came from everywhere at once. It vibrated through the floor, through the walls, through Relics's chest and bones. "Good afternoon, Inspector. I apologize for my appearance. I was resting." The dragon's voice was polite, even gentle, but carried weight that made it impossible to ignore. "My name is Ash. I am the registered owner of this vessel." Relics tried to speak. His mandibles clicked uselessly. His translator device made a confused, buzzing sound. "You're real," he finally managed. "You're actually real." "Yes." Ash lowered his head closer, studying the inspector with what might have been curiosity. Most people have that reaction. Dragons have been gone from the common spaces for a very long time. Owen walked over to stand beside the dragon's massive foreleg. The boy looked tiny next to the creature, but he moved without fear. He actually patted the scaled leg like it was a pet. "I told you he owned the ship. But why?" Relics' training was screaming at him to run, to call for backup, to do anything except stand here having a conversation. Why would a dragon need a cargo vessel? Why would you? He looked at Owen. "Why would you work with a human child?" Ash's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, but in something that looked like old pain. "I am the last of my kind, Inspector. The others left this galaxy 3,000 years ago, when they decided the younger species no longer needed guardians. But I stayed. Someone had to. Guardians, that was our purpose." The dragon's voice grew softer, like someone remembering something from long ago. "We protected those who could not protect themselves. We stood between the innocent and those who would harm them. It is what we were made for, what we chose to be." One massive claw gestured at Owen. "I cannot pilot a ship with this body. I cannot speak easily with most species, as my voice tends to frighten them. I cannot move through stations or walk among crowds without causing panic. So you need someone who can," Relics said, understanding starting to form. I found Owen 3 years ago. His colony had been attacked by raiders. His family. Ash paused, glancing at the boy with something that looked remarkably like compassion. He survived alone for 2 weeks before I arrived to investigate reports of the attack. He was brave. He was kind, even after everything he had lost. And when I offered him a choice, he chose to help others instead of seeking revenge. Owen shrugged, looking embarrassed. Didn't seem like revenge would fix anything. But maybe we could stop it from happening to other people. Relix's scanner was still running. The power readings made sense now. The dragon himself was the power source. The ship wasn't just carrying a creature of legend. It was built for one. The manifest says you delivered medical supplies to Station 12. Relix pulled up the data on his device, trying to regain some sense of professional control. Before that, agricultural equipment to the Deneb colonies, educational materials to the outer settlements. All legal cargo. All suspiciously charitable. We take paying jobs to cover fuel and repairs, Owen explained. But we also deliver things that need to go places where people can't pay. Medicine to quarantine zones. Food to refugee stations. That kind of thing. The inspector's antennae drooped. He had come here looking for smuggling, maybe illegal weapons or stolen goods. Instead, he found a legend and a boy delivering charity across the sector. But his job wasn't done. The power readings that had first caught his attention were still too high. And there was another reason he had been sent to this ship specifically, one he hadn't mentioned yet. I need to see your secure hold, Relix said quietly. Owen and Ash exchanged a look. The dragon's eyes dimmed slightly, and the boy's shoulders tensed. Why? Owen asked. Because the Velcari Syndicate reported a theft 2 weeks ago. Someone stole cargo from one of their transports in this sector. Relix watched both of them carefully. The thief's ship matched this vessel's signature. They hire me to find it. Silence filled the chamber. Ash's breathing grew slower, deeper. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Still gentle, but with something underneath it that Relix's instincts recognized as danger. The Velcari Syndicate does not report thefts, Inspector. They commit them. The dragon's golden eyes fixed on Relix. What exactly do they claim we stole? Relix checked his data pad, though he had memorized the information already. 247 units of restricted cargo. They were transporting it to processing facilities in the core worlds. Units, Owen repeated flatly. They called them units. That is the official terminology, yes. The boy laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Show him, Ash. He should know what we're really dealing with. The dragon rose to his full height, filling the chamber with his presence. Very well. But Inspector, I want you to remember something. Dragons do not lie. We do not steal. And we do not abandon those who need protection. Ash moved toward another door at the far end of the chamber, his massive body somehow navigating the space without knocking anything over. Owen followed, and after a moment of hesitation, so did Relix. The inspector's hand stayed on his communication device. But he didn't press it, yet he needed to see what was in that hold. The secure hold's door required 3 different authorization codes. Owen entered them while Ash waited, his massive form somehow patient despite filling most of the corridor. Relix noticed the dragon's claws had extended slightly, scraping tiny marks into the metal floor. The door opened into a space that had been converted from cargo storage into something else entirely. Beds lined the walls, simple but clean. Food storage containers stood stacked in organized rows. A water purification system hummed in the corner. And scattered throughout the room were people. Not cargo. People. Relix counted quickly. 40, maybe 50 individuals from at least a dozen different species. A Tentari family huddled near one wall, their young ones sleeping in makeshift hammocks. 3 Balvari sat near the food supplies, their gray skin marked with scars that looked deliberately inflicted. A group of humans occupied the far corner, including 2 children who couldn't have been older than 10. They all looked up when the door opened. Most flinched. Some of the children started crying. One of the Balvari males stood up, placing himself between the inspector and the others. It's okay, Owen called out. He's just here to check the ship. Nobody's getting taken away. The tension in the room didn't ease. These people knew fear. They wore it like a second skin. Relix's scanner slipped from his manipulator hand and clattered on the floor. Nobody moved to pick it up. These are the units, Ash said quietly. The dragon had to stay in the corridor, too large to enter the hold, but his head extended through the doorway. This is what the Valkyrie Syndicate wants returned to them. Slaves, workers who had the misfortune to be in debt, or be caught on the wrong planet, or simply exist when the Syndicate needed bodies for their processing facilities. One of the human children started walking toward them. A girl, maybe 8 years old, with tangled blonde hair and a bandage wrapped around her left arm. She stopped in front of Relix and looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Are you going to make us go back?" she asked. The inspector's translator struggled with the simple question. His antennae drooped until they nearly touched the floor. In 30 years of service with the Trade Authority, he had seen smuggling operations, illegal weapons shipments, forbidden technology, and enough contraband to fill a station. But he had never seen this. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been doing this?" 3 years, Owen answered. "Ever since Ash and I partnered up. We track syndicate shipments, wait until they're in areas where we can operate, and we extract people before they reach the processing centers. Sometimes we intercept transport ships. Sometimes we infiltrate stations. Whatever works." 247 people in 3 years, Ash added. Though the number is closer to 300 if you count those we have helped resettle who do not appear in official records. We take them to sanctuary worlds, places where the syndicates cannot reach them under old treaties and protections. Relix picked up his scanner. His hands are shaking. "This is illegal. What you are doing, by every regulation I am sworn to enforce. This is theft of property, interference with legal commerce, and unauthorized transport of unregistered individuals." "Yes," the dragon said simply. "It is all of those things. The Valkyrie Syndicate will file charges. They will demand prosecution. They have lawyers, bribes, connections throughout the authority." The inspector looked at the people in the hold, at the girl still standing in front of him, waiting for his answer. "I am required to report this." Owen stepped forward. He didn't look angry or scared, just determined. "Then report it. But let me explain something first. Do you know what happens in those processing facilities? The ones the Syndicate runs in the core worlds?" Relix didn't answer. "They break people down, remove their identities, their memories if the species allows it, turn them into workers who don't question, don't resist, don't even remember they used to be free." The boy's voice stayed level, but his hands clenched into fists. "It's legal because the Syndicate bought the politicians who write the laws. It's legal because they call them debtors or criminals or whatever term makes everyone feel better about looking the other way." The Balvari male who had stood earlier spoke up. His voice came out rough, like he wasn't used to talking. "I was a teacher on Balvo's Prime. The Syndicate said I owed them money for protection fees I never agreed to pay. When I refused, they took my family, said we would work off the debt. They separated us. I don't know where my wife and daughter are." A Tentari woman raised one tentacle. "I was accused of theft by a merchant who worked with the Syndicate. No trial, no proof, just arrest and sale." More voices joined in, each one telling a similar story. Laws twisted, justice ignored, lives destroyed by a system that valued profit over people. Relix wanted to argue, wanted to say that the system worked, that there were procedures and appeals and ways to fight corruption. But he had been an inspector for 30 years. He knew better. He had seen the reports that got buried, the investigations that got quietly shut down, the officials who suddenly became very wealthy after dropping certain cases. The little girl was still looking at him, still waiting. "If I report this," he said slowly, "what happens to them?" Ash's golden eyes fixed on the inspector. "They will be classified as recovered property, returned to the Syndicate. Within a month, they will be processed and scattered across 100 facilities. Within 6 months, most will forget they were ever free. And if I don't report it, we finish our delivery to the sanctuary world in the Kepler system. These people start new lives. The Syndicate loses profit, but nothing else. And you," the dragon tilted his head, "you go back to your inspection duties, having found nothing unusual on this vessel." Owen added, "Where you could report us and collect whatever reward the Syndicate is offering. We won't fight you, won't stop you. The choice is yours. The room fell silent. 50 pairs of eyes watched the inspector. The little girl reached out and touched his lower manipulator hand with her small fingers. Please, she whispered. Relix looked at his communication device. One button press, and Syndicate security forces would arrive within the hour. His duty was clear. The regulations were specific. This was exactly the kind of illegal operation he was paid to shut down that he thought about his career. His pension, the rules he had followed his entire life. Then he thought about that little girl being processed, her memories stripped away, her future reduced to whatever task the Syndicate found profitable. His manipulator hand moved to the communication device and deleted the inspection report entirely. The relief in the hold lasted exactly 6 seconds. Then the ship's alarm started screaming. Owen ran toward the nearest wall panel and pulled up the scanner display. His face went pale. 6 ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Military grade. They're surrounding us. Relix's antennae shot straight up. That's impossible. I didn't send the signal. I deleted the report. The Syndicate must have been tracking you, Ash said calmly, though his claws scraped the floor again. They don't trust their own hired inspectors. Wise of them, as it turns out. The communication system crackled to life. A voice filled every speaker on the ship, harsh and commanding. Wandering Star, this is Syndicate Security Commander Dren. You are harboring stolen property. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. In the hold, several people started crying. The Balvari male pulled his group closer together. The little girl grabbed onto Relix's leg and wouldn't let go. Owen was already moving, heading back toward the main corridor. Ash, we need to jump. Now. The hyperspace engines need 3 minutes to charge from cold start, the dragon replied. His massive form began backing down the corridor. We don't have 3 minutes. Then we buy time. The boy reached the pilot station at a dead run. The chair looked too big for him, but he dropped into it and his hands started flying across the controls. Relix, get everyone strapped into bunks. This is going to get rough. The inspector tried to move, but the girl was still attached to his leg. He gently pried her loose and handed her to one of the human adults. Do as he says. Secure yourselves. The ship shuddered as the first impacts hit the shields. The lights flickered. Warning shots. Owen muttered, watching his displays. They want us intact. That gives us some advantage. Relix made his way to the pilot station, using the walls for support as the ship rocked again. You can't fight 6 military vessels with a cargo hauler. You need to surrender. Can't do that. Owen's fingers never stopped moving. Ash, I'm going to need full power to the forward shields. Everything we've got. If I do that, the hyperspace charge will take 5 minutes instead of 3. I know. Trust me. The dragon's voice resonated through the ship's systems. Always. The shields flared brighter on the forward display. The ship's power readings spiked to levels that should have blown every circuit on board. Relix realized with growing shock that the vessel itself was connected to Ash somehow, drawing power directly from the dragon. Owen pushed the throttle forward. The Wandering Star accelerated straight toward the largest of the 6 attacking ships. You're insane, Relix breathed. Yeah, probably. The boy's eyes were locked on the display. But I've learned a few things in 3 years. First rule, people expect cargo haulers to run away. They don't expect them to attack. The Syndicate ships scattered, clearly not expecting the maneuver. Owen pushed the vessel through the gap they created, and suddenly they were past the formation. Second rule, military ships are fast, but they're not agile. We are. He threw the ship into a roll that made Relix's stomach lurch. Weapons fire streaked past them, missing by meters. And third rule, when you're partnered with a dragon, you're never really just flying a cargo hauler. The ship shuddered, and this time it wasn't from weapon impacts. The hull itself seemed to ripple, like something was moving under the surface. Panels slid back, revealing systems that definitely hadn't been visible during the inspection. The entire profile of the vessel changed, becoming sleeker, more streamlined. What is happening? Relix demanded that Ash's voice held something that might have been pride. The ship is waking up. This is what the Wandering Star truly is, Inspector. Not a cargo vessel, but a dragon ship, built by my kind thousands of years ago, when we still moved openly among the stars. Weapons ports emerged from the hull. Not many, and not the massive cannons the Syndicate ships carried, but they hummed with energy that made the Inspector's scanner scream warnings about unknown power signatures. Owen targeted the nearest Syndicate vessel and fired. A beam of pure white light shot out, hitting the ship's engine array. The vessel didn't explode. It just went dark, systems disabled, but crew unharmed. "We don't kill," Owen said, already targeting the second ship. "That's not what Guardians do." But Commander Dren's voice came back over the communication channel, and this time he sounded furious. "You want to play hero, boy? Fine. All ships, target the refugee hold. If we can't have them back in working condition, we'll make sure nobody gets them." The Syndicate vessels adjusted their aim. All 6 of them locked weapons on the same point. The section of hull where 50 people were strapped into bunks, terrified and helpless. Owen's hands froze on the controls. "Ash, if they fire together, even our shields won't hold. They'll punch right through to the hole." "I know. We can't let them die. Not after everything. Not when we're this close to getting them to safety." The dragon was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, and his voice carried the weight of 3,000 years. "Owen, when I chose you, I told you that being a guardian means sometimes you stand between death and those you protect. I need you to understand what that means now." The boy's face went pale. "No, there has to be another way. There is no other way. Move the ship directly into their firing line. Use my power to strengthen the shields at that exact point. I can absorb the blast. It will kill you, perhaps. Or perhaps I am stronger than they know. But those people in the hold are certain to die if we do nothing." Relix watched the boy's face, saw the moment Owen made the same choice the Inspector himself had made earlier. The same choice that defined what it meant to be a guardian instead of just a survivor. "Okay," Owen whispered. "Okay. But Ash, if this works, you're teaching me how to do the maintenance on the plasma coils. I'm tired of not understanding half of what this ship can do." "Deal." The Wandering Star moved into position, placing itself between the Syndicate ships and the vulnerable hold. Owen routed every bit of power Ash could provide to a single point on the rear shields. The dragon's breathing grew labored, and the lights throughout the ship dimmed to almost nothing. Commander Dren's laugh echoed through the speakers. "Foolish. All ships, fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." 6 military-grade plasma cannons fired simultaneously. The beams converged on a single point, hitting with enough force to vaporize an asteroid. The Wandering Star's shields blazed like a newborn star. The ship screamed. Metal groaned. Systems overloaded across half the vessel. But the shields held that in the hold. 50 people felt the impact, but survived. The little girl who had asked Relix not to send them back squeezed her eyes shut and held onto her bunk, believing somehow that the dragon she had never seen would protect her. She was right. The shields collapsed a second after absorbing the blast. Emergency lights kicked on throughout the ship, bathing everything in red. In his chamber, Ash went completely still, his breathing shallow and his golden eyes dimmed to barely a flicker. Owen's display showed the Syndicate ships moving in closer, weapons charging for another strike. But something had changed. The boy's face wasn't scared anymore. It was cold, focused in a way Relix had never seen. "They tried to kill refugees," Owen said quietly. "Innocent people who just wanted to be free. They were willing to murder children rather than lose profit." "Owen," Ash's voice was barely a whisper now, weak but urgent. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we've been playing this too gentle for 3 years. We disable their weapons. We let them go. We hope they'll learn." The boy's hands moved across the controls, pulling up systems Relix hadn't known existed. But they don't learn. They just get angrier and more dangerous. We are guardians. We protect. We don't punish. Maybe it's time we did both. Owen pressed a single button. Throughout the ship, every refugee's personal story, every testimony of what the Syndicate had done to them, began broadcasting on open channels. Not just to the attacking ships, but to every vessel within range. to stations, to passing traders, to anyone who would listen. The Balvari male's voice describing how his family was taken. The Tenthari woman explaining her false arrest. The little girl talking about watching her parents dragged away. 50 voices telling the truth the syndicate had spent years hiding. Commander Dren's voice came back, no longer confident. "Shut that down. Shut it down now." "Can't," Owen replied calmly. "It's on automatic broadcast. Even if you destroy us, it keeps going. Every ship that passes through this sector for the next hour will hear it. Every station will record it. You can't hide this." Relics watched the tactical display. Other vessels were appearing at the edge of scanner range, drawn by the broadcast. Civilian ships, mostly, but also a few that showed Galactic Authority markings. Real authority, not syndicate-hired inspectors. The kind that asked questions. Dren made a frustrated sound. "You just signed your own death warrant, boy. Along with every person on that ship." "Maybe, but we're broadcasting your identity too, Commander. Every person listening knows your name now, knows your ship's signatures, knows exactly who is willing to murder children to protect slave operations." Owen's voice never rose, never showed emotion. "How long do you think the syndicate will protect you after you've become this famous?" Silence on the communication channel. Relics could almost hear the commander thinking, weighing his options. Kill them and become a confirmed child murderer in the public record, or let them go and face syndicate anger for failure. The syndicate ships held position, weapons still charged, but not firing. Then Ash stirred. The dragon's breathing deepened, and his eyes opened wider. Power surged back through the ship's systems, lights brightening, engines humming back to life. "The hyperspace drive is charged," Ash announced. His voice was still weak, but growing stronger. "Owen, I can hold it for maybe 30 seconds before I need to rest again. That's all we need." The boy looked at Relics. "Inspector, you might want to hold on to something." "Wait." The inspector moved closer to the pilot station. "You're just going to leave? After all this, what else can we do? We can't fight 6 military ships and win. Even with Ash at full power, we're not equipped for real combat. We're guardians, not warriors. But you've exposed them. The syndicate will be facing investigations now, questions they can't bribe away." Relix's antennae twitched with something that might have been hope. "You've won." Owen shook his head. "We've won this battle. But the syndicate is huge, Inspector. They operate across 50 systems. They have thousands of employees, hundreds of ships, politicians in their pockets across the core worlds. Even with this broadcast, most of their operations will continue. Maybe they'll be more careful. Maybe they'll change some names and reorganize. But they won't stop." The dragon's voice resonated through the chamber. "Which is why we will not stop either. As long as they exist, as long as they harm the innocent, we will continue to stand against them." Relics looked at the tactical display, at the syndicate ships still holding position, at the growing number of civilian vessels drawn by the broadcast. Then he looked at the refugee hold on the internal scanners, at the people who would have died if Owen and Ash hadn't been willing to sacrifice themselves. "I'm coming with you," he said suddenly. Both Owen and Ash turned to look at him. "What?" Owen asked. "I'm coming with you. To the sanctuary world. To wherever you go next." The inspector straightened his jacket, which had become rumpled during all the chaos. "I've been enforcing regulations for 30 years. Following rules written by people who profit from those rules. Today, I watched a child and a dragon show more courage and honor than I've seen in my entire career." He gestured at the syndicate ships. "If you're going to keep fighting them, you'll need someone who knows how the authority works. Someone who can navigate their systems, forge the right documents, and know which inspectors can be trusted." Owen glanced at Ash. The dragon's eyes brightened slightly, studying Relics with that ancient intelligence. "Are you certain, Inspector? This life is not easy. We are always moving, always in danger. And if you're caught helping us, the consequences will be severe." "I'm old," Relics said. "My pension was going to let me retire to a quiet station somewhere and spend my last years playing board games with other old inspectors. That's a comfortable life. A safe life." He looked at the little girl on the internal scanner, now smiling as someone explained they were going to be okay. "But I don't want comfortable anymore. I want to matter." Ash made a sound that might have been a dragon's version of a laugh. Welcome aboard, Relics. Consider yourself our official liaison to those parts of civilization we cannot reach. The Syndicate's ships suddenly broke formation. Commander Drin's voice came through one last time. This isn't over. The Syndicate has a long memory. So do dragons. Ash replied that Owen's hands flew across the controls. Jumping in 5 seconds. Everyone hold on. The Wandering Star's engines built to a crescendo. Space around them began to bend and twist as the hyperspace drive activated. The Syndicate ships fired at the last second, but their weapons passed through empty space. The Dragon ship was already gone, carrying 50 freed refugees, one human boy, one ancient guardian, and one inspector who had finally found a purpose worth fighting for. 3 days later, the Wandering Star approached Kepler, 442b from the dark side, running silent until they were sure no Syndicate ships had followed. The planet looked green and blue through the view screen, covered in forests and oceans that had never known industrial exploitation. Owen guided the ship down to a landing zone marked by simple stone pillars. No buildings, no technology, nothing that would show up on most scanners. Just open grassland and those ancient markers, placed by dragons thousands of years ago when they first designated this world as sanctuary. The refugees gathered at the main airlock. They had cleaned up as best they could with the ship's limited facilities, but they still looked worn and scared. Scared that this was a dream. Scared that the Syndicate would somehow find them even here. Ash moved to meet them, his massive form barely fitting through the corridors. He had recovered from channeling all his power into the shields, but Relics noticed the dragon moved a bit slower than before, like the effort had cost him something that wouldn't easily return. "This is where we part ways," Ash told them. His voice was gentle, the way it had been when Relics first heard it. "There are people on this world who will help you start new lives. Homes waiting, jobs available, schools for the children. The sanctuary planets are protected by treaties so old that even the Syndicates respect them. You will be safe here." The little girl who had grabbed onto Relix's leg stepped forward. She looked up at the dragon without fear. "Will you come visit us?" Ash lowered his head to her level. "Perhaps, when the galaxy is a little bit safer. When there are fewer people who need rescuing." One golden eye focused on her with warmth. "But you will always be able to reach us if you need help. Just send a message to the Wandering Star. We will hear it." The Balvari male approached next. "I don't know how to thank you. Both of you. You risked everything for people you didn't know." Owen, standing beside the dragon, shrugged. "That's what guardians do. At least, that's what Ash taught me. Will you keep doing this? Keep rescuing people, as long as we're needed," the boy confirmed. The refugees filed out slowly, some stopping to touch the dragon's scales, others thanking Owen with words that couldn't quite express what they felt. Relics watched them go, watched them step onto free soil for the first time in months or years. Some fell to their knees and cried. Others just stood, breathing the air, feeling wind that no one owned. When the last of them had departed, Relics approached Owen and Ash. "What happens now? Now we repair what got damaged in the fight. Check the systems. Make sure everything's working properly." Owen pulled up a checklist on his datapad. "Then we see if there are any distress signals worth investigating." "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," Ash said. "Not easy, but simple. Find those who need help. Help them. Move on before the Syndicates can respond. Repeat until we're too old, or too tired, or too dead to continue." Relix's antennae drooped. "That's not much of a life." "No," Owen agreed. "But it's the life we chose. And honestly, Inspector, I can't imagine doing anything else. Before Ash found me, I was just an angry kid hiding in ruins, waiting to die. Now I'm part of something that matters." The dragon's eyes brightened. "And before I found Owen, I was the last of my kind, trying to fulfill an ancient duty alone and failing more often than I succeeded. Now I have a partner, a friend, someone who reminds me why dragons chose to be guardians in the first place. Because someone has to," Owen and Ash said together, then smiled at the synchronization. Relix made a decision. He pulled off his trade authority jacket and dropped it on the ground. The official insignia caught the sunlight, glinting one last time before he turned his back on it. Then I really am coming with you. I'm old, I'm set in my ways, and I'll probably slow you down. But you're going to need someone who can handle the bureaucratic side of things. Someone who can get you legitimate cargo contracts to maintain your cover. Someone who knows which officials can be bribed and which ones actually care about justice. Owen looked at the dragon. Ash looked back. Some communication passed between them, the kind that didn't need words. We could use a quartermaster, Owen said finally. Someone to handle supplies and logistics, while Ash and I focus on the dangerous stuff. Quartermaster. Relics tested the word. It sounded better than inspector. It sounded like something that mattered. I accept. They stood together at the edge of the landing zone, looking out over the sanctuary world. Somewhere in the distance, the refugees were being greeted by those who had come before them, starting the process of building new lives from the ashes of old ones. The Syndicate won't forget what happened, Relics said. They'll be looking for us now. All of us. Let them look, Ash replied. His voice carried the weight of 3,000 years, of countless battles fought and won, of an ancient duty that would continue as long as there were innocent people who needed protection. Dragons are very good at being found when we wish to be found, and invisible when we do not. Owen walked back toward the ship, already planning their next move. Come on, I want to check those engine repairs before we jump again. And Ash, you promised to teach me about the plasma coils. I did, didn't I? Very well, but it's complicated. Everything with you is complicated. True. Relics followed them back aboard, leaving his old life and his official jacket behind in the grass. Above them, the sky was clear and blue, the kind of sky that meant peace and safety and freedom. But out in the darkness between stars, there were other skies. Darker ones, where people suffered in silence, hoping someone would hear them. The wandering star would hear them. A human boy who had survived tragedy and chosen compassion. An ancient dragon keeping a promise made millennia ago. And now an old inspector who had finally found something worth believing in. Together, they would continue the work. Not because it was easy or safe or profitable, but because guardians don't abandon their duty, and somewhere in the galaxy, there were people who needed them. The ship's engines hummed to life. Owen settled into the pilot station. Ash connected his consciousness to the vessel's systems. Relics took his place at the communication station, already searching for the next distress signal. The wandering star lifted from the sanctuary world, caught the sunlight on its hull for just a moment, and then accelerated toward the stars. Legends, it turned out, were more than just stories. Sometimes they were real, and sometimes, if you were very lucky or very desperate, they came when you needed them most.